Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to episode 1473. Thank you for joining me today. We are going to have my friend Ryan Moran here today, and this was really a great interview. Lots of great tips on his new book about starting and succeeding in a business. Yes, a business. And as I have said for 16 years, as I have told you, if you don't have a side hustle, you need one. And maybe that side hustle is just income property investing. Maybe it's an actual business. Maybe you are already an entrepreneur. Either way, you will enjoy this interview. It was a long discussion, so we are going to play it for you in 2, maybe even 3 parts, but probably just 2 parts because we've got a whole lot more in the can that we've got to get out to you. And you know what, folks? I think we got to go back to 7 days a week. Some of you actually complained about that. Yeah, you keep telling me how much you love the show. And thank you for that, by the way. And by the way, thank you for all of you who write reviews. We don't always get to acknowledge them on the show every time, but I do read every single one of them. Some of them are, quite entertaining, I must say. Quite entertaining. Some are from competitors who are green with envy. And yes, there are more than enough competitors out there who are green with envy and want to see the successful people fall. You evil people. There are places for you in the afterlife. And, hey, I'm not going to say any more about that. But today we do have a great show. But, first, I would be completely remiss if I did not acknowledge and discuss what is going on in the country and really spreading around the world. It is a tough time for many people, folks. And what we are going through now illustrates the digital divide that I have long talked about. And the digital divide is really the difference between those who are in the information world and those who are not in the information world. Now, fortunately, we have seen a resurgence, and one of the big proponents of this resurgence is, love him or hate him, Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been a champion of the vocational worker, the blue-collar worker, and frankly, even though it doesn't sound like it a lot of times, the African-American community. Trump has done really good stuff for many people that have been ignored for decades in this country. And whenever I talk about the country, look, we have listeners in 189 countries worldwide. I like to try and have a very global view myself. I've been to 87 countries, some of them many times over. I was not born in the U.S. I was born in Europe. And the vibe of the U.S. president and the U.S. market spreads around the world. And other countries have that influence too, but mostly the U.S. because it is the biggest economy and it gets the most media attention and it's the biggest brand and it's the leader of the G7 nations and all of that. I don't need to go into that in more detail. And so whatever's going on in the U.S. spreads. And obviously, we have a president that is brash and offends a lot of people. And maybe that's by design. Maybe it's just clumsy and ineptitude. Frankly, I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows, except maybe Trump. Maybe it's brilliant. Maybe it's brilliant media manipulation. And there's certainly an argument for that, because whenever he says these outlandish things, hey, the media just drops what it's doing and they start talking about his last outlandish tweet. But look, what is going on in the world is very disconcerting in many cases. I'm talking about COVID-19. I'm talking about police brutality. I'm talking about the class of people who are closest to the money that always get enriched by anything, basically any situation. They're closest to the money printers, so they get enriched. And these are the disgusting scumbag banksters. They're Goldman Sachs. They're the big banks. They're the Jamie Dimon crowd, the central bankers, the other bankers, the non-central bankers, the investment banks on Wall Street. They are the class of people that just has control. They're Bill Gates. Bill Gates, look at how he's out talking his book with his questionable opinions on the virus. You got to just realize at the end of the day, everyone is talking their own agenda. And it's a sad state of affairs, but it's just the way it is. So you got to read between the lines. And we try to help you do that on this show. And we'll continue to do it. And look at the police brutality problem. And the interesting thing about it is, of course, it's absolutely tragic. It's disgusting. I remember in the 90s with the Rodney King beating, I was so livid. I was just livid about the fact that those police officers got off. But I don't think that's going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen this time. There is just way too much outrage. And even if you don't think this matters to you, it does matter to you, because when anybody's rights are affected, when anybody is bullied, when anybody is the victim of a tyrant, you or someone you care about could be next. Nobody is safe from this kind of stuff. And that's why we all have to be forever vigilant about it. But does it mean that we should follow the idiotic, stupid, disgusting, pitiful Maxine Waters and her mantra that she started during the Rodney King days in the 90s, no justice, no peace? No, that's barbaric. That's pathetic. That's disgusting. And Maxine Waters should be ashamed of herself. I cannot believe that people like her actually get to hold office and have influence. That's just ridiculous by any measure. It's uncivilized. Absolutely. You got to let the courts and the system do its thing. Vigilante justice does not work. And it is what it is. Anyway, the thing about this stuff, though, is that just like COVID, just like anything in life, just like the Great Recession 10, 12 years ago, just like the Great Depression back in the 30s, you got to realize that when you're in it, it seems like such a bigger deal than it really is. And these protests, these riots, they don't last long. They always tire out quickly. And like everything in life, this too will pass. That said, I want to play a clip from a great movie, a great 1976 movie. You've probably watched this movie. If you haven't, you need to. It's called Network. It's a fantastic movie. And the main character has this saying, it's called Mad as Hell. And I'll just play it for you because we've talked a lot about the 70s and the economic devastation of the 70s and what an absolute disaster many things in that decade were. We talked about supply and demand shock. We talked about how the 70s really affected life for so many years. And this is emblematic of that because, and I'll stop this clip at some points. And by the way, this is just right off YouTube. And by the way, thank you, so many of you who have subscribed to my YouTube channel and made comments and liked the videos on my YouTube channel. We're really trying to ramp that up. You know, we didn't really pay much attention to YouTube for many years, and we were really focused on the podcast. But I'm just glad to see that so many of you like the channel, and we appreciate your engagement there and your comments and questions. And we try to answer all of them either there or on the show. So here's this clip. Just picture 1976. That was a bicentennial year, the 200-year anniversary of the United States. I remember how things were back then. And, you know, this is a lot of the 1970s misery index the inflation, the unemployment rate, which ultimately mean stagnation or really stagflation, okay, is reflected in this short 3-minute and 49-second clip. So let's listen in. And by the way, this is the main character, a network news anchor, and how he just blows up during his news segment. He looks completely disheveled. He just kind of freaks out in the news segment and tells the public to essentially rise up. And it's just very interesting. So let's listen in.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter.
The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Inflation, inflation, inflation.
Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I want you to get up right now. Get up, go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change.
How many stations does this go out?
You've got to get mad.
67. I know it goes to Louisville and Atlanta.
I'm not going to take this anymore. Then we'll figure out what to do about the depression and the inflation and the oil crisis. But first, get up out of your chairs, open the window, stick your head out and yell, and say, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Who are you talking to, Hart?
So what you're hearing is you're hearing the news anchor just have this meltdown on air. And then what you're hearing also in the other talking is you're hearing the people producing the news program. And the producer is saying, how many stations is this going out to? Keep covering it. He gets up from the desk and walks to the rest of the set, out of the set. The cameras are following him. And doesn't this really just give you some perspective? If you think things are so bad now, most of you listening were alive in the 70s. And the 70s was this sucky, terrible decade economically. Now, some great music came out of the 70s. I think the singer-songwriter music of the 70s is the best music possibly ever produced. Of course, there's great classical music, Pachelbel, Mozart, Beethoven, et cetera, That's incredible. And then there's some great modern music. Avicii, Zed. Hey, see how hip and cool I am for an old guy? Anyway, there's a lot of it. But perspective, right? Look at the perspective. Look at how people thought about 1976. And of course, not everybody was thinking that. But certainly some people were. They were as mad as hell and they weren't going to take it anymore.
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Herb?
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Ted?
But first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
They're yelling in Baton Rouge.
God damn it. Get up out of your chair.
Son of a bitch!
So people are yelling out of the windows in Atlanta and Baton Rouge all over. That's what the network affiliates are reporting.
We struck the mother low!
Stick your head out of the window, open it, and stick your head out and keep yelling and yell, I'm as mad as hell, I'm not going to take this anymore. Just get up from your chairs right now. Go to the window.
Where you going? I want to see if anybody's yelling.
Window, open it and stick your head out and yell and keep yelling.
Now people are yelling out the window.
I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it anymore! I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell and I'm not gonna take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell!
There's a storm going on as all the people are yelling out of the window, if you're wondering what that noise is. Well, you get the idea. Does that help with some perspective? Does that show you that maybe times aren't as bad as we sometimes tend to think they are? Do you see how people felt in 1976? Perspective. That's what you always have to have. In the midst of all that's going on in the world today, there are so many opportunities and so many people are growing their investment portfolio. So many people are growing their businesses. New businesses are being born. New opportunities are being born. There's that old saying, and I don't even know if it's an old saying. Maybe it's my saying. I'm not sure. But hey, maybe it's my old saying. I'm old enough to have an old saying, aren't I? Am I old enough to have an old saying? Yeah, I think so. Recessions create millionaires. Depressions create billionaires. In other words, like the Chinese symbol for opportunity, and which is the same as the symbol for crisis, crisis is an opportunity riding the dangerous wind. So the idea of that former statement is that the deeper the problem, if it's a recession, well, that's the opportunity to become a millionaire, just metaphorically. I'm not saying any of us are going to become billionaires out of this, but hey, maybe someone, who knows? But if it's deeper, if it's worse, if it's a depression, if it's longer, then it creates billionaires. And all those opportunities are there for the people that don't get too distracted by what's happening at the moment. They keep their eye on the ball. Remember my rules. You got to keep good counsel. You got to keep your eye on the ball. Don't get distracted by all this craziness. This stuff blows over a lot sooner than we all think it does. All right, let's get to Ryan Moran. Let's talk about some positive stuff. Let's talk about opportunity. And the opportunities are great right now. If you need us, we are here to guide you. Reach out, jasonhartman.com, or call us in the U.S., of course, toll free at 1-800-HARTMAN, or just jasonhartman.com around the world. And here is Ryan Moran. It's my pleasure to welcome my good friend, Ryan Daniel Moran. He is out with a new book, 12 Months to $1 Million, How to Pick a Winning Product, Build a Real Business, and Become a Seven-Figure Entrepreneur. The book is a small part of his resume. He's got a huge resume. He holds great conferences. He's the founder of capitalism.com and formerly Freedom Fastlane. He's bought and sold several businesses. He's just done incredible things at a very young age. And it's a pleasure to have him back on the show. Ryan, welcome. How you doing?
Thanks, Jason. And I think we should clarify, a lot of podcasters will say, bringing my good friend onto the show, and you've met like twice,
right? Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You've literally slept in my home.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we should say actually good friend.
Yes, I remember that convertible sofa I slept on, and that was the weekend I came out and we went to dinner with Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
we did.
You know what's funny about that, Ryan? That was actually a 4-hour dinner.
And you know what? I tell the story of that dinner in the book.
Oh, do you really? Fantastic.
Yeah, so I tell the story. First of all, we should just highlight the fact that Jason won this dinner with somebody that I'd wanted to meet with for a long time. He invites me. Jason flies across country to have this dinner, and then he tells me where it is. And it's in my condo building.
It was downstairs in the restaurant.
Jason, he flies across the country, and all I had to do was hit ground floor
on the elevator. Yeah.
Like, what a baller. Jason Hartman is such a baller. It's just so cool. But I tell the story about how the one thing that Tim said at that dinner that really had an impact on my life was he asked, I think we were wrapping up dinner, and I said, Tim, there's one thing I would really regret if I didn't ask you. And he gave me permission. And I said, Tim, you've reached what a lot of people aspire to be in terms of level of success, in terms of notoriety and influence and wealth. And so what I want to know is, do you ever wonder if it's all worth it? And he laughed and he said, I don't remember hearing you ask that question. So yeah, what did he say? Well, what he said was, I've discovered there's a lot of things that are not worth pursuing, but the pursuit is worth it. And that always stuck with me, that there's a lot of things. It's like Ecclesiastes, meaningless, everything is meaningless. Right. Yet we create our own meaning with what we pursue. Yeah. I'm surprised you pick Ecclesiastes. That is my favorite book in the Bible, and you're an agnostic or an atheist. I don't know which one. But Ecclesiastes, I mean, King Solomon's brilliant. I'll put Ecclesiastes second on my favorite books. The book of Esther is my favorite book. I named my daughter after the book of Esther. Yeah. And one day we should have, maybe not on the Creating Wealth podcast, but a spiritual conversation. I have a feeling we agree more than where we disagree. Well, yeah. And by the way, I'll just speak to that for a moment, and then we'll get to the point. I know that you were studying to be a pastor. You were going to be a religious leader. That was your goal. And then you changed your thing and became a capitalist. A religious leader of capitalism. Right, exactly. And capitalism is arguably the most successful religion ever. Amen. And I think one of the reasons is, unlike religion, is that capitalism is very natural. Religion says you have to deny a lot of things, so it's unnatural. And we can debate the merits of that for 16 days if you want, but let's not go there. But I think religion is very good for society. And here's my concept for that, Ryan, is that I think if you look at like communist dictatorships, and I know you hate communism as much as I do, and socialism, they always take God out of the equation because they want to make government the big deal. Government, it's like, and I think if you make a society only accountable to government, that's a disaster. The reason is that you can always get away with something when it comes to government, right? There's a black market. You can hide from the cops. You can do whatever. But even if it's not true, okay, even if it's not true, if people believe there is this greater thing, this greater power, and they hold themselves to some sort of accountability to that, I think that's good for society. Go ahead. We're going to go here. Okay. So you'll be surprised at how little I disagree with what you said, but I interpret it just a little bit differently. Okay. So if we look at a concept like marriage, marriage is another institution. Sure. Government's an institution, religious an institution, marriage is an institution, which are really ways that we instill things that we like or things that we want to change into society. So religion has lots of great benefits. And I mean, they have physical benefits. People who are plugged into community live longer. Right. Yeah. Community is a big part of religion. And by the way, I interviewed a famous atheist on my show. I can't think of his name right now, but he's written a zillion books on it. He's a big deal. And he says the one thing we don't have is community. That's where atheism totally blows it. Yeah. So we can instill those things into society through an institution like religion or through government. And we all think that a safety net. Jason, if you're going through a hard time and you're like, I need to sleep on your couch, I'm like, come on over. Right. Like, I'll be your safety net, buddy. So we know that taking care of each other is a good thing. And so we instill it often through government programs. Right. The downside of all institutions is once the thing that we have instilled is no longer necessary, we tend to hold on to them. That's why it's hard to roll back government. It is why it is difficult to scale down programs that we don't like. It's difficult to change thoughts within a religion because they're instilled in us. So it's a double-edged thing where we instill what's important, but then it makes it more difficult to adapt to what is new. And I think that is kind of our role as human beings, to be pursuing what's new and then having conversations like this to bring what we like into where we are now into society.
Mm-hmm. Good point. One last thing about religion, and I love, by the way, on the back cover of Ryan's book, it says, it has a little blurb about his bio, and then at the end it says, he loves talking about politics and religion, the two things that are considered off limits.
They're my favorite conversations.
I love it. That's so funny. But the other thing I'll say about religion is that a lot of people will say, well, look at all those people in church, they're a bunch of hypocrites, right? You hear this all the time, like, I know religious people that burn me in a business deal. And of course that's true, right? They're asking the wrong question, though. The question they should be asking is, how much worse would these people be if they didn't have some concept of religion? They might be barbaric. They might be much worse. And we never know. We'll never know the answer because
it might be the opposite too. We just don't.
Yeah. I just the last statement on that is, I always talk about on my podcast, you can't hear the dogs that don't bark, right? Mm-hmm. There's a profound impact in what is unseen and what doesn't happen, but nobody knows. Like minimum wage, Ryan, and this one you'll love, right? I'm sure you agree on this. Bernie Sanders will say, well, raise the minimum wage. And okay, so people that have jobs make a little more money. Great. But then they never count all the people that never get a job or lost they count maybe they lost their job, but they don't never count who didn't get a job because the government interfered in that transaction where two people wanted to, someone wanted to employ them and another wanted to work. And the government says, no, you can't do that. Sorry.
That's exactly right. And I would say minimum wage is an institution, just like all the other things that we've talked about, where you have something that you're trying to force into society because you see its benefits, and then you are unable to roll that away or to grow through that because you've instilled the bad pieces of it along with what you wanted to change for the positive.
Absolutely. So you were going to say something else, I think, about religion. I just wanted to make my point about how much worse would they be? That's all. And then let's move on to the interview.
Sure. Just that. I think we tend to look for the evidence of what we already believe, which is like in your
confirmation
case,
bias. Yeah.
Like in your case, you're saying religion is a pacifying, calming, uniting idea. How much worse would these people be if they didn't have it? Somebody else might say religion is a divisive, old way of thinking, and look at these people who are screwing these others in a business deal and they're Christians. And so I think we can find evidence for whatever it is that we believe. I think that religion can be a way of bringing beliefs that we want to continue, voluntary beliefs that we want to continue, and instilling them into society so that they last a long time. But there's positives and benefits to that as well.
Yep. No question about it. Okay. Good stuff. So I don't think any of this is in the book we just covered, but let's talk about your book a little bit. I mean, there's so much to talk about with you, Ryan, because you've just done so much at such a young age. It's truly amazing. Maybe just to get a context, what motivates you? So give us a little bit of your background. You were going to be a pastor. You got out of seminary. I think you were in it, right? You were actually.
I was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. For how long?
Less than a year, but I finished out the program at the institution I was in. I went to Indiana Wesleyan University. They had a degree that was seminary in a degree form. Mm-hmm. And so I opted out of the degree, but I finished at Indiana Wesleyan University, which is actually where I discovered Austrian economics and monetarist thinking. And so it completely changed my life because it made me fascinated in economics.
Right. You went from religion to the religion of capitalism, which we talked about that. And capitalism is the most successful religion ever. Yuval Noah Harari in his book Sapiens talks about that. That's a brilliant book, by the way. Highly recommend it. And the sequel to it, Homo Deus, which is also excellent. Many of you have heard of him. He's a very big author. So what got you interested? I mean, you really started your business career as an Amazon seller. Is that correct?
I started my career when I was 18 years old from my college dorm room as an affiliate marketer. I learned how to get websites to show up high in Google, get free traffic, and sell things on those websites. And I built email lists and monetized those email lists. And I became an internet marketer kind of by happenstance because I was in school to be a pastor thinking I was going to make $30,000 or $40,000 a year. I was always entrepreneurial. So I was always looking for the new way that always motivated us as kids, just find the next thing. And what I discovered a few years in was that my internet marketing skills, when applied to what I would consider a real business, having physical product brands, was a lot more effective. So rather than just trying to make this thing happen on the side, if I took my skill set and applied it to a real business, it was a lot more effective. Amazon was an emerging platform at the time. And so I started businesses that were selling products on Amazon. I'm often labeled as an Amazon seller. I just think of myself as an entrepreneur and a businessman who looks at whatever the modern trend or the modern opportunity is. And right now, that is e-commerce. And a few years ago, it was just Amazon because Amazon was this wide open west that was growing by leaps and bounds. And it still is growing by leaps and bounds. But now all of e-commerce has changed with it.
So was the first business selling yoga mats on Amazon after the internet and affiliate marketing kind of thing and getting sites to rank? Then it was Amazon. And was that yoga mats?
You know, it's funny you should ask. I should clarify. Like, I made my first $1 million before ever selling on Amazon. And then I took those skills, applied them to Amazon, and I decided it would be a good idea to start 3 businesses at once, Jason. That's not a good idea, right, just so you know. Yeah, okay. So I started with 3 different partners, by the way. Oh. So I started a yoga mats business, a sports nutrition company, and a supplement business all at the same time.
That's right. I forgot about the sports nutrition and supplements. Yeah, okay.
So the yoga mat company I built and sold within a year. The supplement company was a disaster failure. And the sports nutrition company, I started with $600, took it to about $10 million a year and sold that for an 8-figure exit. Wow. So I kind of had a strikeout, a base hit, and a home run.
What's the difference between supplements and sports nutrition?
You know what? That's a great question. Who it's for. That's the biggest thing. And one of the things I hammer home over and over and over in the book is that your business is determined by not what you sell, but who you sell to. And it's kind of like content marketing. Like we could be having this same conversation, and if it was a religious podcast, it might not be as popular. But since we're talking to entrepreneurs and capitalists and people are interested in the direction of the world, we can have this nice conversation that covers a variety of topics. So who you target determines how successful a business is, no matter it is what you're selling. So I had a supplement company that sold generic fish oil and things that everybody takes, which you don't have a target market when you're doing that. That business failed. Where on the other side, I had a business that sold similar types of products like pre-workouts and post-workouts and testosterone boosters and branched chain amino acids, very specific to a sports and athletic market. And it was wildly successful. Really, the only difference, you could make an argument, yes, we sold different products, but the main thing that was different was who it was that we targeted.
That's excellent. You know, Ryan, one of the things you said on your podcast a long time ago that really influenced me is that the game is about building an audience quickly and monetizing to that audience. And I love that. That is just a fantastic philosophy, if you want to call it that. Can you expand on that idea a little bit?
Yeah. And I would say the audience is the primary asset that all businesses are doing. At the time that we're recording this, Joe Rogan just announced that he signed a 9-figure deal with Spotify to bring his content over to the Spotify platform. And we all know that the reason Spotify paid $100 million to Joe Rogan was not because of the sponsorship revenue. It was because of the audience that was being brought over. He just legitimized spodcasts. You should call it podcasts.
I love it.
It's not a bad name. So Spotify just legitimized their podcast player because now Joe Rogan is exclusive to them because he brought the audience over. It had nothing to do with the ad revenue, had nothing to do with the profitability, had everything to do with the scale of the audience. The audience was the asset. Yeah. And all business is really customer acquisition and audience building. And when you are aligning with your audience to bring them closer to the goals that they have for themselves, That's a business, and that's what we're all actually here to do.
Spodcasting. Remember, folks, you heard it here first. Yeah, Joe Rogan, $100 million deal with Spotify to make his podcast exclusive on Spotify. And you know what's interesting about that, Ryan, is we look at some of these giant deals that Rush Limbaugh did. I think that was years ago. It was $158 million 10-year contract or something. And then Howard Stern did a giant contract like that. But now it's a podcaster.
Yes.
So that is huge. It shows you the way the media landscape has changed so much. But like you say, it's all about an audience. It's all about an audience. I wonder what the multiplier was on that deal, by the way. You know, you said it's not about the sponsorship, it's about the audience, but his sponsorship couldn't have been, I don't know, $20 million a year, and he got a 5 times multiple. It has to be way bigger than that, right?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, the most expensive podcast rate I've ever heard was a $38,000 per show sponsorship.
Who's that?
And so if Joe's is there or around there, and he does maybe 3 ads an episode, let's just say it's 2, so he makes somewhere around $100,000, $80,000 to $100,000 per episode,
yeah.
And he does 3 a week?
Yeah, okay.
So $300K a week.
Yeah.
So $1 million a month.
Yeah. No, yeah.
It might be a 10 times return.
Yeah. Wow. That's truly amazing. That's truly amazing. And it really shows you how the world is changing. Okay. So
and Jason, he might get to keep the ad revenue too. We don't know this.
We don't know his deal.
Own the audience and own the revenue, but now just be giving up YouTube and Apple Podcasts to be exclusive. It might just purely be a licensing deal, but he gets to keep all the ad revenue. Can you imagine?
That is insane. It's incredible. And he got Elon Musk to smoke a joint on his show. So that had the ratings went nuts for just that episode. Yeah. Yeah. Incredible. So build the audience, monetize to the audience, and you go through that in the book. So, before we get to that, you said e-commerce much more than just Amazon.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, Shopify is growing just as much as Amazon is now. I would consider anyone who sponsors the Joe Rogan podcast and sends them over to their own website to be in e-commerce. It's online shopping. And because of what we've seen happen in the last few months, online shopping has exploded even more to the point where even Walmart shoppers are now going online. So we are now seeing the laggard side of the adoption curve come into society. Right. We now have all retail stores have to have an online presence if they even want to survive. So that's e-commerce is not just shopping on Amazon. It is all online shopping, all online advertising, all online exposure. And that is just all commerce at this point. At some point, we'll drop the E and we'll just realize
it'll
that
be
it's
called
all
commerce. Yeah, right. And that's interesting that you say we'll drop the E, because in the first .com boom, 1999, 2000, 2001-ish, that range, they stopped using .com. Of course, they used it. It's on their website. But they didn't refer to themselves as eTrade.com. They just said eTrade. Of course, we have a website. Duh. That's an interesting point that we'll drop the E. That's good. This will be continued on the next episode. Thank you for listening and happy investing. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.